Marblehead, and welcome to Up for Discussion, a program where we explore the issues that you are talking about around town. Our panel for November is Ethan Foreman, editor of the Salem News, Chris Stevens, editor of the Marblehead Reporter and wickedlocal.com, Will Dowd, assistant editor of the Marblehead Reporter, and Joanne Mayer, a former member of the Board of Selectmen. On the front burner, The Mariner, Chapter 2. The Board of Appeals resumed its hearing into the Mariner project on Pleasant Street. Proponents are seeking a special permit under the zoning law to build 84 units to house independent living, assisted living, and memory care patients. Neighbors want to keep the area as single residences only, and a parade of architects and engineers appeared before the board to talk about traffic, drainage, landscaping, and more. But when the ZBA put off comments from the public until later in November, some in the audience were not happy. So, Joanne, there seems to be a lot of confusion about this process. Do people think that they're going to get to vote on this?
No, we don't. It's a law that's already on the books in Marblehead that we have, that we do want, we need this type of facility. So the hearings come to do with the actual conditions on which it'll happen. There are certain things that are laid out, as we said last month, in the bylaw that they have to fulfill, and the builders have pretty much fulfilled the requirements. The zoning board is sitting to examine how they have fulfilled these requirements, to be sure that they are totally complied with, and they'll also be listening to the neighbors and the public and the community at large in case they have some ideas that they might put into the project to make it better or more suitable to them. But basically, the project is allowed by bylaw. It's a matter of making it suitable and acceptable to the public as much as possible.
I think there's been a little bit of confusion, though, because I see lawn signs.
There has been.
Now I've seen a button that supports it, and it's almost like a political campaign.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking you got, what, 5 people who are going to vote on this?
Yeah, yeah. And it's getting nasty, too, which is kind of sad to see. I feel like people are getting a little mean-spirited about it.
I think, again, as I said in the last week, I don't think people understand the process.
No. No.
Now, they certainly, if they have legitimate complaints about this proposal, they can voice them, and the builders will very likely comply pretty much with what they want. They'll do their best, because they want to live in the community, too, basically.
You know, I went to that zoning board hearing.
I did, too.
I saw you there. And I saw you there. And it seemed that the experts all had their reports before the board. They were lengthy. And it was freezing in there, and the night went on and on and on. But the board did take a couple of votes, and one was to take all of these expert reports and do what they call a peer review. So
I think only 2 of them for peer review.
I think.
Well, maybe you could be right.
Well, it was drainage, it
Yep.
was lighting, it was traffic.
Yeah.
I don't think they did it on landscaping, but I'm not sure.
Well, that's open
Probably
for
not.
grabs still.
The lighting one was sort of an impromptu vote
Yeah.
after they just decided to do that third one, run the spot pretty much to do an independent study for that one.
It's probably to
as
appease the
well.
neighbors. Lighting can be very touchy. People are afraid
Yeah.
it's going to
Yeah, and
shine in
that's
their
something,
windows.
that's something they can have real input on.
Yes, absolutely.
And they should.
Yeah, the way they angle a light,
Yeah.
the shield they use, there's a dozen different ways you
But
can
that
fix
is
lighting.
something that the builders seem to have really been serious about, because the lighting that they're put in is the most, as I understand it, is about the best you can do
Yeah.
Wow.
in terms of being able
Yeah.
to sheet it from the neighbors.
Yeah, they're using this sort of LED technology where they can sort of direct the light rather than like fluorescent lights or incandescent or whatever. But it's basically this technology is developed so that you can actually have more control over the lighting. So yeah.
And it can be control, meaning it can be dimmed as the night goes on.
And we also heard from the landscaper who said that they're going to be putting in various barriers or trees, but it's going to take some time for those trees to grow, obviously. But
5
that should
years.
sort of 5 years. Yeah, 5 years.
That's another
In
place
5
where
years' time.
the abutters can have some input. They can insist on bigger trees.
Yeah, they can certainly plant larger trees.
You know, I talked to some of the neighbors down there, and one in particular who seemed to say that the neighborhood was happy about the peer reviews, and that because they don't trust the traffic study, they just don't trust it. The drainage one, they think that 24-inch pipe in Pleasant Street is not adequate to drain it out. So the peer review will look at all of that and determine if the original stuff is right, I suppose. But I think what made the residents most unhappy at that hearing was that there was some misunderstanding about when the public gets to speak on this.
That's true, and I think that was unfortunate. It should have been said that once we have this settled, and once we have listened to all the whole project in whole, and we make our decision, then it will be open for you to change, because there's no way you can change it now.
No, you haven't heard.
We have to have the whole project in front of us.
But then also, I think there's a point that was made that this meeting was exceptional. I mean, there were over 240 people that were there. If you have that many people there, maybe there could have been some sort of, overruling or sort of, sidestepping of what regularly goes on. That's what people have said.
But you also have to remember, this is a working meeting of the ZBA.
Yes.
These guys have a job to do.
Yeah.
And if you do I mean, the meetings always sort of run the same, and they explained it at the first meeting, I think, but of course that was such a zoo, nobody was probably really paying attention. When you go to a ZBA meeting, they ask for people to stand who are in favor of the project and people who are opposed to project, and that always comes at the end, because like Joanne said, you have to hear about the project before you can actually really react to it. So,
But I'm surprised that I've been at contentious planning board hearings, zoning board hearings, and I'm surprised that they didn't say to the developers, okay, finish your presentations within a certain amount of time so we can hear from the residents, knowing that there's so many people who are out and may have some questions about it.
Yeah.
By hearing from the residents, it can sort of mollify some of their objections, because the residents will bring up a topic, and the consultants are there, and they may be able to answer it, and then it doesn't. These opposition topics don't simmer.
yeah, that's true. They could.
But it's
Well-
hard, because turning it over at that point means that there's got to be agreement among the builders and you really need to have the project in a basket to present.
Yeah, it gets
in
off
my
track.
view. Because otherwise you'd be there and we were there late and it was freezing.
Days.
I thought I was going to die.
Why was it so cold?
I don't know what was going on there. But boy, I'll tell you, if they'd spent much longer, and I was actually trying to figure out, how can I get out of here?
Well, the question is, how much does how much work does the town? Is there an engineer who reviews these very technical specifications of the project? Maybe that has to be done behind the scenes, and so that at least the zoning board is a little bit up to speed on what's going on, and not rely on a public meeting with 200 people who really want to voice their concerns.
This is a hearing. It wasn't a public meeting. I mean, it was the public.
Right.
It's an open meeting. We have
Yes.
an open meeting law.
But
I
that's-
agree
but
with you.
that's what
If
this
they
is,
had
the working
thought it out
meeting.
and had another chance, they might have taken your suggestion. But they've been doing this for years, and that's the way they always do it.
Yeah.
Well, I was kind of curious as to, I think the chairman was pretty clear at the beginning.
Yes,
yeah,
he was.
I think he was too.
We are not going to hear from the public if we don't have time. I mean, that's paraphrasing, but basically that's what he said. And I would sense that in that room, I think we got out of there somewhere around 10 p.m. maybe.
I think so.
If you had a parade of people getting up to voice their concern, and then after a while it all becomes repetitious because, and so I don't know what the best way to do it. I think they kind of led with their chin in proposing Thanksgiving week as the time for the next meeting.
Well, that had to do with this peer review things. There's a lot of work that has to be done. They couldn't just have it in a week or two, because
Right.
they've got to have the traffic study and the drainage, and who knows how long that's going to. You know how hard it is to
Exactly.
get people to do stuff. So I think they were just making it so that it would be ready for the next meetings, so we wouldn't have a meeting and say, well, so sorry, we don't have all the information we need.
Yeah, I'm not even sure.
That would make 'em really mad.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they will have all of it done yet.
I
don't know
agree.
yeah, that's 4 weeks is not. I don't think that's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, December maybe.
a little
would've been
window.
little bit-
And then you get into Christmas.
Yeah, then
I
you get
mean,
into Christmas and Hanukkah and all the
Well,
holidays.
and sometimes when you read a group, nothing's going to make anybody make
Yeah,
some of
I
them
know.
happy.
Yeah.
In talking to the people that I talk to, you know, they're saying, look, we understand the needs of the elderly. And then one of them said to me, well, you're in the Council on Aging. You explain to me what's going on. And I talked about the silver tsunami and the baby boomers and the need from that point of view. So I think there are some neighbors who think that the ZBA is at least being reasonable. And but all as it takes is
Doesn't take
a
many.
couple of people to, you know, do the catcalling from the gallery, and the tone of the meeting changes, and everybody gets
Yeah.
painted with the same brush.
And it definitely shifted toward the end there.
Oh, interestingly, I checked with Swampscott. They are going to have an assisted living, and it's going to be 86 people. It went through in a breeze, and I said, I already introduced myself as from Marblehead, and I said, well, did you have any people come to your meetings? And he said, not too many. He said, we had a couple from 100 Salem Street, which is the street right down the way. So I said, well, you were pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Well, I think the one in Marblehead is behind Marshall's, right? And it probably is
It's in Swampscott, you mean?
pretty much a commercial area. Or
And I think that's really sort of playing into it, because the development in Swampscott is right on Pleasant Street, you know, right there. People go by that every day. This is land that's just tucked behind Marshall's. No one knows it's there. I mean, you're going to put housing back there, that's fine. You can't see that parcel from
There's
the
single-family
road.
housing there now, though.
I
single
couldn't
family-
figure out where the parcel was.
It's
Yeah, me
it's
either.
behind. There's just a sort of no man's land. If you go into Swampscott, there's like a bungalow as you
Yep.
go into the
Just-
toward the Marshalls,
just
and
as you
that's that
said.
land that's kind of over the hill, so it's kind of up over.
Yeah.
You don't really know it's there. You know, kids might cut through there to get to the going to and from school, or from the high school. And I think that's really sort of playing into why Swampscott didn't really have any opposition. I think it's
Well, the-
really site specific.
The traffic at Vinton Square is an absolute disaster.
It's not going to get any better or worse. And if you put an assisted living facility sort of in a commercial area, people are just going to walk. You just walk to Marshall's. You don't have to drive out.
Well, I mean, there are people that say it's not that we're against assisted living or the elderly, but the location.
Yeah.
But where in Marblehead? I mean, everything is so tight in Marblehead.
Yeah.
Where do you put it?
I think that's the other problem for the Mariner. I think people just see the town, land is just disappearing. There's nothing left. There's very little open space, and I think that's the thing that the developers are probably struggling with, because people just don't like to see another piece of land now get developed, and especially with such a high density.
I
I
got
think-
news.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I got news for them. It's going to get developed.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
yes.
That's
It's
it.
going
Yes.
to be
And there's
developed.
going to be more open space, I think, with this plan than there would be if they
I
put
agree.
14 single-family homes up.
Or if they really push it and it goes into the court, Marblehead loses control.
Yeah.
And it could go into any kind of housing you can think of, like 40B, low-income housing, and that would be really dense. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a tricky thing here.
Be careful what you wish for.
Be
I guess.
careful what you
Exactly.
wish for.
Yeah.
Because you can't fight a 40B if there's land for it.
No.
No. Well, then I guess it's in peer review now. There'll be another shot at this at the end of November 23rd, I believe.
Yeah.
It's a Monday.
And then we'll take it. We'll see what happens there. Well, growing pains at the high school and another search for a new school committee member. These are the stories from the school beat this month. The high school seems to be bursting at the seams, and Principal Lane Millington told the school board that he is concerned.
We are currently, in terms of space under the structure that we have, we are at our maximum. Every classroom in the high school is either running a class or running a directed study every period of the day. So much so that we are also using the lecture hall, and we are also using the library conference room for the spaces that we don't have.
Now, Chris, you've been looking at this. What kind of solutions are they looking at?
Right now, they're not exactly bursting at the seams yet, but Mr. Millington did tell the school committee that they're pretty much at their max in terms of students. Every classroom is being used every day, 5 days a week. They've busted out conference rooms and other areas that weren't typically classrooms to use as classroom space. And that is in part doing that to keep class sizes down, because that's probably their biggest priority. One of the things they're looking at is open campus for Marblehead High School.
Again,
Yeah, yeah.
Been there
Coming-
before, Joanne?
Coming back around.
there.
They're looking at a really modified version to start with, possibly only even internal, which means kids wouldn't be able to actually leave the school grounds, but they wouldn't have to go to study hall. They could, if they have a first period or last period is a study hall, they could come in late or leave early. Which would get rid of some of the backlog they're hoping at dismissal, at arrival and dismissal time. Instead of going to study hall, they can go to the library, or they can go to the music room, the art room, or wherever. There just wouldn't be a designated study
So
hall.
the study halls would be used for classes?
Yes,
to
and
kind of
that would
check out?
free up class space for them.
Well, the high school is 13 years old, right?
Gosh, is
Yes.
it that old?
Yeah, 2002.
I mean, isn't it too soon to have a space problem?
I hate to say this, but as a resident of Swampscott, boy, I feel a little bit out of place here, but I just wonder what happens if they had considered 13 years ago a regional high school, because Swampscott has built their high school, and you never know about space projections. So I know that we have to have that Thanksgiving game.
Say, what would happen to the
Where would
Marblehead
they
Swamp?
play?
Yeah.
Regional schools have a lot of advantages. They get transportation money, regional
You think they would
transportation
fly?
money. It didn't,
Yeah.
and it's too late.
You've also got Nahant kids in there too, don't you?
That's great. You got a three-town regional high school, but instead of looking at that, now, I mean, I'm just scratching my head and saying, is that going to happen with Swampscott now? I have a child up there, and Swampscott High is not that old. Yeah.
No.
Well, it seems to me that somehow the people who are responsible for planning these things should be able to look out 20 years and know how big a school they need.
They do. I mean, they do those projections. And
13 years in,
usually
they're
they
wrong.
do them a couple of different agencies will do those projections. And yeah, and usually, as Joanne mentioned earlier, they are pretty on the mark. The middle school actually is pretty much on the mark, but the high school just isn't. The high school has sort of bucked all trends. I think the predictions were that they would remain fairly stagnant, and they just haven't. They've collected on average 12 students a year for the last 13 years, and you go, well, 12 kids a year is not a big deal.